Good morning, afternoon, evening, or whenever it is for you right now. My name's Luke, and in today's video, I'll be responding to this very interesting YouTube video by Answers in Genesis called Check This Out, Refuting Evolution. I'm very impressed that a 2.5-minute YouTube video is able to refute one of the most accepted scientific theories of all time, and I can't wait to have my whole world shattered. Answers in Genesis, by the way, is an organization dedicated to teaching the creationist viewpoints that the Earth is 6,000 years old, all animals were created as is during a 6-day work week, the world was covered in a gigantic flood because it rained a lot that one time, among other pseudoscientific guff. You've probably heard of them, they're the guys who built that giant ark in Kentucky. This video series, called Check This Out, is one of their YouTube resources. I'll be taking a look at one of those videos today and responding to the points it brings up to see if it really does refute evolution, as it claims to do. And without further ado, let's get started.
You hear this one a lot. Science has proven evolution, therefore evolution is true. Since evolution is true and Christians don't believe it, then Christians don't believe science and they aren't rational people. Really, let's put that claim to the test. First off, evolution in the sense that things change is evident. No rational person disputes that. Therefore, rational Christians believe it.
Yes, Christians do believe in the concept of change. I'll agree with you there.
We can observe change, but evolution in the sense that life came from non-life and then that life began to randomly generate new genetic information and over time it eventually produced humans is something entirely different and something that quite honestly doesn't hold up against science.
Oh, did you see that? He almost pulled a sneaky on us. He just said that there's no evidence that life arose from nothing and then evolved into different life forms. But those ideas, the idea that life arose from nothing, and the idea that organisms diversify into different species, are two completely different issues. One issue is on the origin of life, the other is about the evolution of it. The narrator here tries to pass those as the same idea, and he's talking so fast he almost succeeds, but he didn't slip it past me. Let's continue.
In other words, evolution in the sense of molecules to man is not scientifically plausible and therefore should not be viewed as scientific fact. Quite honestly, it is in great opposition to science, that is, observational science, the kind of science we can test and repeat and use our five senses to understand.
If you listen to enough of these creationists, you'll notice that they have a really big hard-on for, quote, observational science, and completely ignore that historical science is valid too. Well, unless you find some Dead Sea Scrolls or something, then historical science is totally valid to them. But generally, a creationist will say that evolution can't be observed or repeated, which means it isn't observational science, that's true, and therefore evolution isn't science at all. That's not true. Historical science does have its challenges when compared to observational science, but that doesn't mean it should be ruled out entirely. Theories concerning the past, while unrepeatable, can still be reliably inferred by the evidence we do have from multiple different areas of science, like physiology, paleontology, genetics, among many others. A lot of those sciences are observable, and they support the theory of evolution. I'll leave the link to an article about that very subject in the description of the video. I'm linking you to all of my sources, by the way, which is something that Answers in Genesis seems to have forgotten to do. Whoops, honest mistake, I'm sure. Side note, if observational science is the only valid way to conduct science, doesn't that mean creationism isn't scientific either? Weird. Let's continue.
Science demonstrates that over time, living organisms lose genetic information. They don't gain it. That same science demonstrates that life doesn't arise from non-life. Follow along if you would. Fact 1. There is no known observable process by which new genetic information can be added to an organism's genetic code. None. That pretty much refutes evolution right away because there's no way to go from a fish to an amphibian without adding new information, right? If living organisms cannot produce new genetic information, how can anything gradually change into something of higher intelligence or form or complexity? That is, how can anything evolve from an amoeba to a man without adding new genetic information? The answer, of course, is that it can't. Plain and simple.
Good question. How does life gain complexity without the addition of new genetic material? Good thing for evolution, genetic material doesn't need to be added, it just needs to be changed. This change happens in the genes by accident most of the time. Whenever an organism reproduces, one or more of their genes can mutate. This mutation can change a certain aspect of the life form, from eye color to size, any number of features. If this is a beneficial mutation that better allows the organism to survive, the life form will survive to pass on its genes to the next generation. If it's not a beneficial mutation that doesn't allow the life form to survive as well, it won't, and the mutation won't be passed down. As more generations come and go, more mutations are added, meaning more changes are made to the organism. This will result in the life form becoming more, well, complex. That's a very, very simple explanation of what's currently accepted by most biologists, but it shows that in order for a life form to become more complex, they don't have to gain genetic material. The genetic material just has to change, something that happens a lot by accident. Again, I'll link to an article that explains it far better than I could.
Now, some have speculated and they have imagined all kinds of things, and they brought in artists to produce creative renderings based on guesses, and they have been successful in telling a very convincing story that humans evolved from ape-like creatures. But those are just drawings, people. They're just stories.
I think here the narrator is trying to say that paleoart is invalid because it's just art, but good paleoart is based on existing fossil evidence. Nobody is claiming that the paleoart itself is evidence for evolution, it's just a way to illustrate existing evidence. I'm not really sure what the point here is supposed to be.
But what we really observe is humans are humans and apes are apes. Now, if Fact 1 buried evolutionary thinking deep into the Precambrian soil, this next fact, Fact 2, tosses so much sediment on it that not even the greatest team of paleontologists with the latest subterranean gizmo could dig up the remains.
Ha! Funny.
Check this out. Never, again, never has it been observed that life can come from non-life. So here are two major scientific evidences against evolution. I reiterate for clarity, life has never been observed to come from non-life, and there is no known, observable process by which new genetic information can be added to the genetic code of an organism.
Alright, I was expecting him to expound upon Fact 2 a little bit, but he really just repeated the same statement twice and then moved on. It's like he's in a big hurry to distract us from the fact that he's equating the origin of life with the diversification of life. Like I said before, those are two entirely separate issues, and arguing against issue 1 doesn't mean that the argument applies to issue 2. You're correct in saying that we've never seen life emerge from non-life, but that has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not life, once it does exist, is able to evolve. But that's another trick the creationists try to play to confuse their audiences. They try to equate a belief in evolution with a belief in, say, the Big Bang, or something else. Those two issues have nothing to do with one another, and an argument against one doesn't affect the other. Same here.
So molecules to man evolution doesn't really make scientific sense. Yet we are all here, and life is all around us in various forms. Although evolution cannot account for this, the Bible can. The Bible reveals that the all-powerful, all-knowing, supernatural God created the heavens and the earth out of nothing, and all life according to its kinds, that is, each with its own set of genetic information. So, again, what the Bible reveals makes sense of what we see and understand. Evolution does not. Enough said.
I think the point they're trying to make here is that if you look at Genesis in the simplest, most surface-level way possible, it explains biodiversity better than science does. Take that as you will. So, all in all, if you strip away the flashy visuals and the Ben Shapiro-style speed-talking, what this video really presents is two pieces of evidence that supposedly refute evolution. Their Fact 1 is that genetic material can't be added to a genetic sequence, so evolution can't happen. But, as we saw today, genetic material doesn't need to be added, it just has to be changed for animals to diversify. And we see this all the time, from dogs to finches to peppered moths. Of course, we don't observe the gigantic dinosaur to bird style changes, but that's only because those gigantic changes take place over an unimaginably long time, millions of years. Modern humans have only existed for maybe 10,000 years. But nevertheless, we still see animals changing. We observe it. That's really all it takes. The video's Fact 2 is that life has never been observed to have arisen from non-life. That, as I mentioned before, is a total straw man argument and has very little to do with whether life changes or not, so I'm not sure why it's included in a video about evolution. So really, the video's only piece of evidence it threw against evolution can be easily explained as just a misunderstanding of how evolution works. Enough said.